reel you back in here. I just know Bill's been around. I've been around in Lincoln in the community and different schools and stuff and churches. And it's interesting as he shared a little bit about some of his life. We were probably crossing paths at different points in life in different places and schools and churches and other things in the community. And we didn't know each other. I know Bill, but some of you guys know him pretty well. But cool stuff. I'm going to just have you come on up and go for it. And we try and make a hard stop at 10. So if there's time for questions or any of that afterwards, we'll leave about 5 minutes or so toward the end. Comfortable holding the mic?
Yep.
All right. Give Bill a round of applause.
Good morning. I'm excited to be here. Each time I get to tell my story, it helps me heal a little bit. So thank you for helping me with that. I'm hopeful that in telling my story, it'll be impactful to you today as well. May not all of you relate to it, but hopefully some of you will. And before we get started, I'm going to say a quick prayer. Don't need to bow your heads. Please look up with me as we will when Christ returns. Father, thank you for your promises that when we are gathered, you are here as well. Lord, may the words that I speak today be the words that someone needs to hear and not necessarily the words that I need to say. Amen. I'm going to start with a scripture in Isaiah 40, 27 through 31. Why would you ever complain, O Jacob, or whine, Israel, saying, God has lost track of me. He doesn't care what happens to me. Don't you know anything? Haven't you been listening? God doesn't come and go. God lasts. He's creator of all you can see or imagine. He doesn't get tired out, doesn't pause to catch his breath, and he knows everything, inside and out. He energizes those who get tired, gives fresh strength to dropouts. I know you guys all know the last verse in this passage, but wait on it. I want you to hear this one. For even young people tire and drop out. Young folk in their prime stumble and fall. But those who wait upon God get fresh strength. They spread their wings and soar like eagles. They run and don't get tired. They walk and don't lag behind. Many of you know me. I've got family in the room here today. My son Cody is here with me. He's a big part of the story. Could get rough, son. You ready? I'm going to share just a piece of my story. Probably only my son in here knows all of it. I'd say my life is 99% normal and about 1% standing on the threshold of hell. At least it felt like that at the time. I grew up right here in Lincoln. My parents were divorced when I was about 2 years old, so my father wasn't a big part of my story. I attended school here, started at Lincoln Christian in 3rd grade. I would, however, in the summers, since my mom, single mom, she sent me with her dad, my grandfather, and I'd go out to western Nebraska and I'd live out there on the farm. And the day school was out, I'd head that way and I'd spend the summer on the tractors and harvesting wheat and working with cattle, stuff like that. It was out in western Nebraska, a small farming community called Lodgepole. It's out by Sidney. Maybe some of you have heard of Sidney. Anybody in here know what Sidney's famous for? Wind. Yeah, Cabela's, that's right. When I was a kid, Cabela's was just a 3-story brick building in downtown Sidney. And I remember going in there as a kid and running around. I think their catalog business was just starting. But anyway, that's a whole nother story and interesting. But anyway, my grandfather passed away when I was 19 years old, and that whole thing kind of came to an end. About that time, right after I graduated from high school, I started working at Lincoln Electric System. I spent 13 years there. Started out part-time while I was in college. Became a supervisor there. Kind of stopped going to college for a while, and then in the late 90s, I finished 5 semesters of college in 15 months through Bellevue University, got my degree. Decided to leave Lincoln Electric System and went to try my hand as a financial professional. And I had the book knowledge, passed all my tests, did really well, and then had 6 of the most miserable months of my life. I absolutely hated it. It just was not for me. So it was the summer 2001, and I'd left a good job, and 6 months later I left another job, and so I quickly, with my brother, I started up a ADT security business. And towards the end of the summer, we scraped up all the money we could, which was about $2,000 between him and me. And we bought a 5,000-piece mailer. And it hit the mailboxes on Tuesday, September 11th, 2001. Normally, I mean, it's funny now. It was not funny back then. Normally, you send out a mass mailer like that, you're hoping for a 1% to 2% response. We got 0 calls. So that money's gone. So what am I going to do? Well, I had a bit of a construction background, so I remember calling my uncle-in-law, Dick Zeckman, right here, and he helped me get started hanging some siding on some houses, which I did for a couple of years. And then sometime around 2003, his brother, another uncle-in-law, talked to me about trading commodity futures, which I actually enjoyed. Similar to what I didn't enjoy, but it was a little different working with farmers, a little bit working with my background, and I enjoyed that. Anyone here know how to make a small fortune trading commodity futures?
Start with a large one.
Start with a large one. One smart man here. Yep. So anyway, did that till 2010. Market had turned. It wasn't quite as profitable as it used to be. So then I went back to my construction background, and that's kind of where I'm at today. Have a construction business called Blue Skies Construction and a division called Restore Roof, a commercial roofing division. So that's kind of what I do now. Through all that time, had good times and bad, 5 kids, I got 4 grandkids now. They've all blessed our lives. Back in 2010, stared down potential bankruptcy, worked a way out of that. Through it all, God was there, always present. It may sound crazy, but I think it takes more faith to not believe in God. I really do. The sense of peace that comes from knowing that God is my partner through it all is so calm and reassuring. And so many people choose to do life without Him, and that just amazes me. So the question for today, where's your heart when times get their worst, when the testing comes? Will you be ready? I wasn't. And I'm going to jump my story back now, kind of giving you the 10,000-foot overview. In the mid-90s, I was married and had 2 of my kids at the time. We were living in a home we owned. I had a good job at LES. I was also working part-time on staff at First Evangelical Free Church, just maintenance and cleaning and stuff like that, just helping out around the church. And I developed a good friendship with a guy also on staff there named Fernando Diaz. And over the course of a year and a half, I mean, we became great friends. Just as any of you have a really good friend and you hang out with them all the time and you're just cutting up and all that kind of stuff. I got to share one story with you. If any of you have ever been to First E Free Church, the lobby outside the sanctuary is kind of got a curve to it. And I remember one Saturday morning, me and Fernando were there. There was a wedding that day, and we were setting up things for the wedding and helping people get ready for that. Early in the morning, no people were there other than the wedding party, and so I come through on one side of the hallway, and I see him walking down the other, and he did not see me. So I ducked in behind this door area, and I'm waiting. Now you got to understand, he's a good friend of mine. So when I come out to scare him, I'm launching and I'm tackling him, right? Okay. So here he comes. I can hear him. Well, what I didn't know happened was one of the bridesmaids had walked out of the sanctuary and right in front of him. And when I launched, I'm mid-air at him when I realize it and roll off so I don't hit her, scared her to death. I hit the floor, and when I catch Fernando, he is on the floor rolling laughing. I mean, it was that kind of a friendship. I mean, we really hit it off. So we were always pranking each other, movies, dinner, all the kind of things that good friends do. And so it was on Friday, May 3rd, 1996, my wife Robin and I had gone out to dinner with Fernando and Sandra. And he was born in Mexico and was up here. I love Mexican food, so he had taken me to this restaurant downtown. It's not there anymore. It was around 16th and P. It had a Mexican like grocery store up front, but in the back there were a few tables. I don't remember the name of it. It's not important, but so we had dinner there that night, and we went to a movie later. And sometime during the course of the evening, I'd shared with him I had this side project I was doing. I was going to be doing some work on Sunday afternoon. And I kind of needed some help, and I said, hey, would you help me out? Sure. So we had the agreement, and Sunday came and went. I was feeling guilty for working on a Sunday. I really try not to do that, but I thought, man, I'm not going to call him and bother him. I don't want to take away from his family. He had a small son at the time, and so I didn't call him. And on Monday, May 6th, I went to work at Lincoln Electric System. It was about 7:30 in the morning. And I was just getting ready for my day, and sometime mid-morning, 9:30 or 10, I get a phone call at my desk, and it's my wife. And she knows that my office situation there is such that I'm in an office with 5-6 other people. I don't have a private office. And she just says, hey, can you get to a private line and call me back? I said, sure. So I walked down this hallway and toward a conference room where I knew I had a private line, and your mind's racing, right? You had no idea what's coming. And so I picked up the phone, called her back, and she just said, Fernando is dead. Sorry, it's been a long time ago, so it's just tough to get through. So, what do you do? What happened? Well, we've all lost friends and family before, but life happens, and when people die, they do, but when it's a self-inflicted gunshot wound, it's different. And here's where life started to unravel. Great deceiver, man. Loves to tell lies. As the story of Fernando's death and his life, for that matter, started to unfold, I became convinced that not only could I have prevented his death, but I was further convinced it was my fault, because I didn't call him that Sunday to come work with me. What's the truth? We'll never know. But today I believe that I never even crossed his mind that day. See, one thing I didn't realize about my friend was that he was an alcoholic, and he was suffering from a whole different set of demons. And that kind of added to the problem, right? I mean, if I'm this good of a friend, I should have known, right? That he struggled with that. I should have known, and I didn't. He kept it hidden well. So friends, here's the lesson. I'm not going to make you wait until the end of the story to share the lesson with you. I'm going to give it to you right now. Please hear me. I told myself word for word that my friend's blood was on my hands. It's just the way I told myself. All it takes is one bad thought in your life repeated consistently to destroy your life. And here we go. For years, I allowed these lies to prevent me from moving forward with my life. I lost interest in going to church. How could God love me, right? The lies. I wasn't a particularly good father as I buried myself in work. If I can't be a good friend, how can I be a good father and a good husband? I honestly don't remember much of my son's first 5 years of life. I mean, Satan was having his way with me at this time. I was not effective at anything. Fernando had left behind not only a wife and a son, but his wife was also pregnant at that time, about 5 months. And so I guess maybe the one thing I did do right at that time as part of my penance, if you will, for what I'd done wrong or perceived to have done wrong, I felt that I was needing to help take care of her. And so we did what we could financially to help her, whether with money or with clothes, or we had a small concessions business. I remember hiring her a few times to help us run that. We just did what we could to help. And so with this in mind, that I'm trying to help her out, understand where I was personally as I share this next part of this story with you. Very few have heard it. No one in here outside of my son has heard this. It would be 13 years from the time of Fernando's death until I spoke publicly of this for the first time, and up till then only my wife and my pastor knew this part. So Sandra called me one day, and this was several months after Fernando's death, and she had trusted me a great deal, and relied on me a lot for what to do next. And she just said that she'd gotten a call from the Lincoln Police Department, and they were ready to release the firearm that Fernando had used to take his life. And I thought, well, she needs the money, and I know the value of the firearm. I just told her, well, let's go get it. So she made the appointment with the Lincoln Police Department, and I went down there with her, and I don't know, it's not something I do every day, so I was really unprepared for what happened next. We walked in there, and she identified herself, and the officer behind the desk grabbed this clear plastic bag with a firearm in it, with dried blood and hair and brain matter. Yeah, that was my response too. She's standing right next to me, so I took it and I concealed as best I could while she dealt with the paperwork, and we left. Yeah, that was rough. So what do you do with it now? Well, remember, one bad thought repeated consistently can ruin your life. So Satan's lies now convinced me that I needed to deal with it, and I'd need to clean it, sell it for her. I remember that day asking my wife to take my kids and leave the house. I can't imagine what was going through her mind as I asked her to do that. And I sat there on my living room floor, and through tears and solvent, I cleaned that firearm. Took it apart, cleaned it piece by piece, and I remember pausing one time to look at the blood on my hands. Today I know that's the mental picture the great deceiver wanted in my mind. I'd said it out loud, and now I had it for real. And my friend's blood was on my hands, and I believed that all for years. Anytime I tried to do something good for me or my family, the image returned, and I was convinced that I could never atone for what I had done. The first time I shared this story publicly was at Lincoln Christian School in 2009. My pastor at the time, Greg Loy, had encouraged me to share it that day so that I could heal. And it has had a tremendous impact on myself and others in attendance that day, and it has allowed me to heal. I still struggle to talk about it, but I'm no longer a slave to those lies. Do you ever think sometimes, do you ever wonder why things happen? You ever question God, why did this happen in my life? And sometimes we get an answer, and most of the times we don't, right? Sometimes I think to myself when I get to heaven, I'm going to ask God about that. Anyone else ever say that? Truth is, when we get to heaven, are we really going to care? It's going to be so magnificent when we get there. I doubt that I will ever even remember this. In fact, that's probably part of His plan, that we won't remember the pain that we have here on this earth. But I believe that even if we don't know why, God always knows why. Well, a few years later, something would occur that would bring into focus why I went through that, or at least from my perspective, why I think I went through that. It was Sunday morning of May of 2015. 19 years have now passed since the death of my friend Fernando. It's 7:30 in the morning. My son Cody was living at home at that time, and I was awoken that morning by the heavy sounds of feet running up the stairs and blasting out the door. Cody's never up that early. He just wasn't. What in the world is going on? I remember getting up, and by the time I got up, I could hear his car start and racing down the street. While I had no idea what was going on at the time, what had happened was Cody had seen a Facebook post from a friend of his that was saying goodbye to the world, and not in a good way. And so my son raced to meet with his cousin and another friend, and between the three of them, they were going to go see if they could find him. Well, based on the picture in the post, one of the three recognized the location where the picture was taken. And it was the entrance to a cemetery on Rokeby Road between 27th and 40th in South Lincoln here. And so they raced to that location. Probably over an hour now has passed since that post went live. And that particular stretch of road is a gravel road. You can see for a long ways away. And so that as they approached the scene, they could see his friend's vehicle parked there in the entrance to the cemetery. But it was too late. And the three of them were witness to a suicide with a shotgun. Most of you in here are fathers. What would you do? I'm not equipped to handle such things. Or am I? I remember when Cody finally called me, and I had known nothing up to this point, and he called me and he's crying, tells me what happened, tells me where he's at. And I remember getting in the car and driving over there, and I get to the scene. Of course, there's law enforcement everywhere, and there's a sheriff at the top of the hill, and I pulled up and I said, "Hey, my son is down there," and he said, "I'm sorry, I can't let you go through." And I was angry. I wanted to be there with my son, and this man was gracious through my anger, and told me that he understood, but you need to wait here, sir. And it seemed like an eternity. It was probably 90 minutes, maybe 2 hours that I waited there at the top of that hill for Cody and his cousin and the other young man to walk up. And I remember as Cody got there to me, I just embraced him and through the tears and we hugged, and it was just a really rough time. But I remember as we started to drive home, within minutes of getting in the car, I could hear the words of regret coming from him. I should have known. I should have done something. It's my fault. I knew this friend. He'd been at our house just a week before. But I could hear all those familiar words that I had spoken nearly 20 years ago. And they were lies, and I knew that. So as the days and the weeks unfolded and we processed this together, I was able to listen with a very understanding ear, probably one that very few others could understand with. And so it was important to me that I help my son understand that there was nothing he could have done to prevent this tragedy, that it was not his fault, and we were just able to work through and process those things together. A few years back, right here at Lincoln Berean, there was a funeral that took place. It's for a kid I knew from my skydiving club. another part of my story. So back in 1998, after Fernando's death, I decided to take up the sport of skydiving. It's kind of funny how you think about it. Right in the middle of the mental mess that I was in, I decided, hey, let's go skydiving. Anyway, it's something I stuck with and been doing it for years. But anyway, there was a young man in our skydiving club that unexpectedly took his life. And I remember the funeral. The family was part of the Berean family, and the funeral was held here. And I had about, 15, 20 of my unchurched, unsaved friends here in the church trying to process this death with them. And I remember one of my friends in particular I was able to connect with. I could see he was really struggling. I called him afterwards, and he was contemplating the very same thing, and I was able to walk through that with him and help him with that. And don't misunderstand me, I'm not any kind of a counselor, I'm just a guy. Okay, just like all of you, we're just guys. But I was able to listen with an understanding ear and let him know that he was loved and that he'd be missed if he wasn't here. And in his words, not mine, it made a difference to him that I took the time to help him with that, through that situation. My good friend Dennis Nunn is here this morning, and while I'm not going to share the tragedy of the story he went through, I walked alongside of that tragedy as well. So one day at a time, through prayer, how did I get back to where I'm at? Well, nothing magic happened. It was just one day at a time, through prayer and through fellowship with good friends. I got to where I think is a good place in my life. I love my life, love my family. Somehow we walked out of that valley of the shadow of death. And so as I look back, was this coincidence or was it divine coordination? I don't know. I don't have those kind of answers. Maybe someday when I get to heaven, I'll ask God, but again, I doubt it. I can tell you one thing for certain, and that is this, that I hope I never have to go through any of that again. I never want to experience that again. Maybe some of you have been through that, you know what I'm talking about, and if you haven't, I hope you never have to walk that path either. But the fact is, it happens every day to people of every age. In fact, it's possible there's someone in this room right now that's maybe struggling with that. And just want you to know there's help for you. Look around. There's help in this room right now if that's something you're struggling with. You just need to reach out. Find the courage to reach out. So as I bring this to a close, I'm just wanting to encourage each of you, if you are struggling, please find that courage to reach out to someone and talk with them. This church body is packed full of people who love God and who will pour out His love and their love to help you through that. And likewise, if you have the opportunity to be God's love for a person, embrace it and help them. And if you can't do anything else, if you can't find that courage, at least pray. Let the Holy Spirit work in your life and help you through that. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind that God heard every one of my prayers, and He was with me every step of the way. Every step of the way. As I look back, I'm just reminiscing here right in front of you. I'm sorry. He was there always, in the darkest times. So that's my story of tragedy. I hope it's had an impact on some of you, hopefully in a good way. Happy to answer any questions as we close here. And I wasn't sure if I was going to share this or not, but if you're anything like me, music speaks to my soul sometimes through a song. And there's a song about prayer, kind of made from an unlikely source. It won't be too difficult for you to find it, but I encourage you to listen to it. it won't be hard for you to find. It's by the King of Country, George Strait. It was released a few years ago. The name of the song is What Goes Up. Trust me, listen to that song, give it a listen. You'll be glad you did. I think that's all I've got, Kurt.
Man, that's amazing.